Hey folks, you can't step into the IT space today without coming across some sort of Microsoft technology. I mean, they've been in the industry for decades, right? And whether you like them or not, their technologies are part of the everyday computing operations of most organizations. Now, what I thought we would do for this episode of SysAdmin Weekly is I've got Eric back on the show, and we're going to be talking about the top Microsoft skills that you should have in your tool belt as a sysadmin. Now, we talk about things like on-prem, Active Directory. Yes, I said on-prem, and we explain why. We talk about PowerShell, Azure skills, Microsoft 365. When you kind of go and get all of these skills, you really become a nice, well-rounded administrator for Windows environments. So hope you enjoy it, hope you find it valuable, and here we go. A new week. That means it's time for another episode of SysAdmin Weekly. This is your podcast by sysadmins for sysadmins and dedicated to all the tireless tech folks working in the trenches day in and day out to keep our digital world spinning. As always, I'm your host, Andy Surwich, and I've got my very frequent co-host with me today. I've got Eric Siren. How's it going, Eric?
Good, Andy. How are you doing?
Doing good. Can't complain. We've got a interesting topic on the docket for today. So a while back, Paul and I, we did an episode that was basically, what makes a good sysadmin, where we did a little bit of skills talk in that episode. But what I wanted to focus on today is let's focus specifically on the Microsoft ecosystem. Because let's face it, I mean, you can't be a sysadmin without having to touch Microsoft occasionally. That said, I have run into a couple of mythical unicorn Linux-only admins out there, but very few and far between. So what I figured we'd do for this episode is we can sit down and go over the top Microsoft skills that sysadmins should have in their tool belt. But before we get to that, we have a couple of recurring segments on the show. So before we get to that, I want to mention really quick, I know I'm repeating myself here, but I always forget to plug our other content until the very end of the show, and I'm trying to get better about that, but I wanted to mention our companion newsletter. So if you don't know, we have a companion newsletter that goes out once a week, usually Tuesdays. Once in a while, it slips a day or two, but usually on Tuesdays. And you can find that newsletter at newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. It includes all the links to the current episodes. We usually highlight an older episode as well. We include a bunch of links to fantastic community content. I provide, hopefully a useful editorial every week as well. And I have been known to throw in some things like markdown templates and cool PowerShell scripts and stuff like that once in a while as well. So again, that's newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. Now, on to our regular recurring segments. And this would normally be the spot where we would do a news react segment. But we have another comment to cover and review here, Eric. And this one was a comment from our episode that was basically, what the hell is Broadcom doing to VMware? And I'll just dive right in here and start quoting the comments here. So this comment was on Spotify, and basically, I'm quoting here. I was still in college when the acquisition happened, parentheses. I know, it wasn't that long ago. So we can presume this person is, probably a younger sysadmin, still learning, maybe still in college, right? They continue. Immediately when our sysadmin teacher said what happened, most of us collectively sighed and groaned. I think one guy said, "Why are they trying to monopolize virtualization?" It did become a lesson for us all, and we quickly shifted into using Hyper-V and VirtualBox. We also learned more about clusters and other virtualization platforms and environments like Proxmox, which is still used today. So First off, if you're the commenter and you're listening, appreciate the comment, folks. If you have comments you want to share with us, you want to, contribute to the show as well, you can always comment on our YouTube episodes or our Spotify episodes, or you can reach us right at our inboxes at contact@sysadminweekly.com. When I look at this comment, Eric, a couple of things stand out, and really, for me, 3 words stand out: Hyper-V, VirtualBox, Proxmox. So in the scope of all the Broadcom drama, right, and then knowing that this particular sysadmin is, still kind of in that younger learning phase, university possibly, I think it's interesting that it looks like VMware has been pulled from the curriculum, right? From what they say, they quickly shifted to Hyper-V, VirtualBox, and Proxmox. So, I mean, that's not a problem for Broadcom right now, but 10 years from now, that's kind of a big deal 10 years from now. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, this is like a concrete example of what we were warning about in that episode. This person is going to, go out, be a junior admin to somebody. The knowledge they bring is going to be Proxmox, Hyper-V, and VirtualBox, right?
Yep.
And people, well, if he doesn't have VMware, he's not going to get employed, he or she. No, that is absolutely not true. You can get a job without VMware knowledge. And if you're walking in there and they're like, oh, we have this problem, and this person says, you know what, I have these 3 solutions that could fix that, and none of them are VMware. And then, of course, through the years, this person is going to go from junior to mid-tier to senior.
Yep.
And yeah, eventually that's a decision maker, and in a classroom of future decision makers.
Yep.
This is precisely what we were talking about, and this is how it happens. This is how empires end in the tech world: is they lose relevance with the up-and-comers.
Yep.
And of course, let's also add on top of that is here you and I are. We're old folks, and we've been dealing with the VMware for a long time, and we're like cheering this person on. Like, yes, you're doing it right.
Yep.
So, yeah, but we did an episode on it, and I feel like I'm about to dive right back into that episode. But yes.
Well, no, we won't do that. But you're not wrong. I mean, this is how tech empires crumble, right? So, I mean, there's so many vendors I've seen that they underestimate the power of, what do I want to call them? Your champion end users, right? Those end users that you have that are very vocal about your product, love your product, talk about it to everyone. As a brand, as a company, you can't underestimate that. And I think Broadcom is going to get broadsided in a couple of years because of that. And yes, I know that was a terrible joke, but a while.
We're gonna let it go. You know what? We're dads, so we get to tell bad jokes. The interesting. You know what? I completely just derailed myself there. It's just.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be a SysAdmin Weekly episode if we didn't derail at least once or twice, right? But, we were kind of talking about how, those champion end users can really help spread the knowledge, the good word of your company, right? And,
yes,
it's like free marketing for your company base.
I had a conversation before this call on a completely radically different topic, but man, does it apply everywhere. Like, there's a certain place people and companies get to where it's hubris. Like, they forget that they had to fight to get to where they were one way or another. Like, at first, VMware had to fight to be adopted, right? Because people are like, no, what's wrong with my physical machines? I don't understand that. I had to be talked into my first virtual deployment. I didn't get it until I did. Yeah. And then, okay, well, that makes sense. Right. So VMware had to fight against that to get to where they were. And then, of course, they've had challenges along the way that you can argue all day about hit or miss on it, but it wasn't free. It wasn't guaranteed. VMware was never a guaranteed success story. They had to earn that. And now that they have it, and a lot of that old guard is gone, you have these people sitting up there thinking, well, we can't be toppled. We're VMware. And like, that's not how that works. right?
Right.
And so I don't think they're going to either. There's two possibilities. One of them is the venture capital mindset we've got into is I don't care as long as I get to the next quarter, get my bonus, then the whole company can fall apart. I don't care. Or
Right.
they literally believe they cannot be beaten and they will then destroy themselves from within. It's one of the two or a combination.
Yeah, neither option is great. I say that as somebody who, when I was in the trenches doing a lot of virtualization work, I worked with VMware a lot, and it was a great product.
It
So
was.
it's
It
tough to
really
see
was.
sometimes,
Yeah, but
So
and it's interesting. We can even tie this back to another episode. I remember talking about people getting this way, and just this
oh yeah,
sort of, well, you can't fire me, I'm irreplaceable, and all of a sudden, well, that's like a fast track to getting fired. Like, oh well, if you're
yep.
irreplaceable, we need to get rid of you now and rip the Band-Aid off and go. So if VMware's up, well, you can't fire us for VMware. Like, okay,
I think that was the episode where we talked about how you can showcase your value as a sysadmin, not just you yourself, but how can you, uplift your department as well too, right? Which is especially helpful in those cases where, especially now, where people are looking at budgets a little bit closer, and unfortunately, there's layoffs, right? Folks, I'll be sure to include both of those episodes that we mentioned in the show notes so you can take a look at those. But definitely, so. And again, I appreciate the comments. If you're watching / listening, appreciate the comments, and we're always happy to involve our audience in the discussion. So good stuff, everyone. Anyway, the next recurring segment that we have on the show is Nerd Hour, and of course, it doesn't take an hour, but that's what we call it. That's where we talk about the nerdy, geeky things that we've been working on. I always go first in this segment, Eric, so I'm going to let you go first this time. So,
I'm just gonna
what are the geeky, nerdy things you've been working on?
I'm just going to use my time to complain because my nerdy, geeky things are derailed because I've been spending so much time patching up this latest Citrix thing. And man, maybe I'd have a segment about what has Citrix done to itself in the vein of what has Broadcom done to itself. So yeah, I've been spending a lot of time. NetScaler is now becoming a 4-letter word.
So you've been fighting with NetScalers. They've had quite a few high score CVSS vulnerabilities recently. You must be patching for one of those, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, it makes it emergency. That's exactly what it is. We got a
Yeah.
Okay, all hands on deck. Everything's on fire. We're gonna burn the whole thing down and good times.
Oh, that's always fun.
And
So.
sadly, and I really seriously hope this is not the case this time, but it seemed like for a while there, they would get one high severity one and we would rush to patch. And then like 2 days later, they'd get another one. And it was like they had a flurry of them back to back. And then they'd sort it out and they'd calm down for a few months and then they'd do it again. And man, I really hope we're not back to the
Well,
rant over.
maybe you'll be touching NetScalers again next week.
Don't put that
I'm
on
not
me, brother.
trying to curse you, but let's hope not. So
Let's hope not.
anyway, in terms of the nerdy geeky stuff I've been working on, I've got a side project that I've been working on that has involved its own M365 tenant, and I fought with this tenant for maybe 2-3 hours the other day. Longer than this usually takes. I was in the process of setting up break glass accounts, right? If you don't know what a break glass account is in M365 or Entra, right? Basically, it's an account that bypasses things like conditional access and allows you to log in no matter what. Now, historically, they were rate limited, very complex passwords that went into a safe somewhere and only ever came out if that account needed to be used to recover the tenant. Well, Microsoft has now introduced MFA requirements on any account that is accessing sensitive portals. So Entra, the Entra management portal, for example, which this is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. Every single admin account should have multi-factor authentication. Makes it a little bit trickier for break glass accounts because you don't want to make the break glass login process so complex that it potentially doesn't work, right? Ultimately, I was able to, it's funny how you have to do it. So you have to use a strong authentication mechanism to log into the account so that you can then use a FIDO2 key as the multi-factor method. A password is not considered strong enough, right? SMS as MFA is not considered strong enough. So what you have to do is, I had to go through the process of setting up a, why is the acronym escaping me for the moment? Basically a temporary access pass, temporary access pass. There, I did it. I remembered. So basically, it's a password that's only good for X amount of time, right? So after you log into the account using that, then you can register a FIDO2 key, and now it's officially MFA protected, because just by nature of having a FIDO2 key, which you have to unlock with a PIN code when you use it, you are now multi-factor compliant. And then, one of those FIDO2 keys went in a safe somewhere. So anyway, that was a fun little adventure. It's been a while since I've had to set up break glass accounts, and it's a little bit more difficult than it used to be. So I was surprised when after, the second or third hour, I'm like, wow, I just now finished that. So that's the nerdy, geeky stuff I've been working on lately.
Sounds
anyway.
painful. So is there a non-colloquial term for break glass?
A non-colloquial term for break glass? I don't know. I've always called them break glass.
I have too, but then I think about it, like, that's colloquial. Like, that means on a fire extinguisher in a public building. That's what that's for. You have to break the glass on it so you can get the axe out or get the extinguisher out. That's where that comes from. And yeah, it seems like that's a colloquialism, not a professional. I don't know. Made that up, but
maybe we can call them the oh shit accounts.
I'm sure that'll go over very well. Let's write that down and put it on the MSN homepage.
That seems like a completely valid term for those, right?
I mean, I'm down. I'm sold, right? I'm good,
right? Anyway, so I say let's dive into our main segment for the episode. And of course, today we are talking about the top Microsoft skills that sysadmins should have in their tool belts. And again, I don't know any sysadmin. I'll take that back. I know a couple, because like I said earlier, they are unicorns, right? But there are not many sysadmins that can say they never touch a Microsoft box, right? And so I've got basically 5 key areas, Eric, that I wanted to make sure we talk about that I feel like are non-negotiable. Like, these are the top skills that you should have, the baseline skills you should have. And people are going to be shocked, I tell you, when I say we're going to start with on-premises technologies. I hear gasping in the audience. And I'm going to tell you why. And so when I think about baselines, baselines that will ultimately lead to best practices, that core knowledge, even though it's very much a cloud-first world these days, I feel like sysadmins should still have a very strong grasp of on-premises technologies, for the simple fact that I believe it does a really good job, that knowledge does a really good job of helping them understand cloud concepts later on. And so the other reason I believe that is on-premise is not, it's always going to be around. It is not ever going to 100% go away, right? Because there's those organizations that, for compliance reasons or whatever, they can't move that data off-site. So there will always be on-premise. There will always be a need for on-premise. Now, when I think of on-premise, Eric, I'm instantly thinking on-premise, and in the Microsoft world, I'm instantly thinking Windows Server, but more specifically, things like Active Directory, group policy, DNS, which I'm going to come back to, DHCP, health checks. How do you monitor and make sure that the health of all those systems and services is good? File print. I know sysadmins hate print servers. I still hate print servers, even though I don't have to manage them anymore, thankfully. Patching cadence, and more importantly, hybrid connectors, because like I said, it's very much a cloud first world. You should know how hybrid connectors work as well. So I guess maybe we start with AD, or Active Directory, for those folks that don't know what AD stands for. I think it's non-negotiable, Eric. I mean, what do you think?
I am 100% there.
Yeah.
Non-negotiable. You need to understand the concepts around what. Ooh, wow. Where do you say you have? What are the? How do you quickly summarize what you have to know about Active Directory, especially from somebody who was there when Active Directory was invented? I'm not in the room. Sorry, I should be very careful. I said that. I had NT351 and NT40 boxes, so NT351 didn't have Active Directory. No, and NT4 didn't. It was 2000, right? You had a domain controller in NT4, but it wasn't Active Directory yet, was it? Or was it? Man, my head hurts
Oh,
now. I don't know,
remember.
but it doesn't matter. It's not relevant. That's not what the exercise is about. I've been around it so long. Active Directory is like a lot of little pieces.
Yep.
What it means to be a domain member versus not, permissions, how that all
Yep.
overlaps.
User
What makes
and group management.
a domain controller special. Man, ouch. I didn't come into this flat-footed. I mean, you actually shared your talking points with me, and I still feel like I wasn't actually prepared to say, all right, what about Active Directory do you have to know? And like,
It's vast. I think
it really
at a
is.
basic level, permissions assignments, user and group management, right? Understanding how to secure Active Directory, because it's the
That's a
keys to your
oh,
on-premise kingdom.
that's a big topic right there, though. It'd be
It is,
hard to. I hired a junior admin. Do you know how to secure Active Directory? And if they're probably like, what does that mean? And like, I don't really know what to tell you. I don't know how to make that a single sentence either. But I would say like, need to be able to have like a pretty basic idea of, who gets domain admin access. Is anybody who asked for it? No, things like
right,
that. Yeah, understanding. Well, that's going to go back to your group membership stuff. Like group member, how do you give people powers in a domain? You got to understand
right.
that. More importantly, how do you prevent people from getting powers in a domain? Huh. Wow, that's a.
Well, I think we covered the base, the baseline stuff you must know. I could go deeper, like, hey, you need to know about FSMO and how to transfer it and seize. I mean, I don't remember
Yeah,
the last time I had to seize FSMO roles, right?
without a busted
I'm not
domain
even
controller, you shouldn't have to do that.
right.
Um,
I'm not even sure I could. If I'm not even sure I can remember what FSMO stands
I will.
for.
I'm gonna tell you a secret that I have carried. No, this is not a secret. I have been telling people this for 20 years. When Google became a thing, I don't care so much that you remember how to do a specific thing. I expect you to be able to identify when a thing needs to be done
Yep.
and be able to Google that.
Yep.
Google the symptoms correctly. What I don't want, what helps me a lot is if you're coming in and something goes sideways and you're floundering, like I literally have no idea what to do, so I'm just going to start rebooting things. Not
Yeah,
okay. I
it's
need
not great.
you to have kind of enough of a grasp of what's going on to like pull out a concrete symptom that I can plug into Google,
Right.
right? Like, none of my machines say that they can reach a domain controller. What's happening? What do I do? And like my first brain is DNS. Is DNS okay? Is the DNS server
It's
down? Is the
always DNS. It's
Yeah,
always
right.
DNS.
Yeah. So like you want to say something you have to know about Actor, you have to know DNS.
Yep.
You have
DNS is
that's non-negotiable. And I get that's not a Microsoft specific technology, and you can run a domain successfully without a Microsoft domain controller. I have seen a couple of bind server deployments with Active Directory that works. I don't love it, but you can do it. But you have to at least be able to look me in the eye and I say, what is DNS? And you need to be able to give me a good answer that,
yep.
because
And
if you can't do DNS, you can't do Active Directory.
that's I would argue DNS, out of everything we talk about today, requires a special mention, because it's involved in nearly everything else in some way, shape, or form. And
Yes.
not only will it help you understand, the inner workings, name resolution of a Windows domain, it also helps you on the external side of the network as well too, when you need to update things like external A records or MX records for your domain, you're rerouting mail flow, things like that. DNS, You got to know DNS, hands
Yeah.
down,
And if
non-negotiable.
honestly, before you even get into Microsoft specific technology, if you don't get DNS, if that's some kind of weird voodoo magic to you, stop, pause this recording, go out, find a nice, good starter kit on DNS. And I'd like to tell you some, but again, 20 plus years in the trenches. I'm good enough at DNS to get through every day I've had to so far, so I don't know where to
Well,
tell you to go.
so what I'll do, folks, is next week's version. We are recording this on August 28th. Next week's newsletter, I usually do a fundamentals section. I will go look and find a resource on DNS. So if you're fresh to the industry, you don't know DNS super well, I got you. I'll find a resource. Find something
Maybe
good.
that's something we need to produce and publish up on our site too. That's fundamental, basic starting your day technology. You gotta know DNS.
For sure. When I think about AD and on-premise Microsoft technologies, the other big one here I want to cover before we move on is group policy.
Yes.
Group policy, I feel like, is non-negotiable as well too, because that's where, I don't want to say it, that's where like your advanced tier management comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
It allows you to manage at scale across an entire network. You can deploy software with group policy. You can basically anything you want to do inside the Windows operating system for either a server or a workstation can be done via group policy. And when you get really good at group policy, I mean, that's like God mode for on-premise Microsoft environments,
Yes. And I have said over and over and over until people are sick of hearing it that I fully believe the Active Directory is Microsoft's killer app, and group policy is kind of what makes that true.
Yep.
Because a lot of the things, if you didn't have group policy, you could make a pretty strong argument that, we could probably get by without a domain. And then no Active Directory, so on and so forth, because a lot of the other components have pretty good alternative solutions. Group policy really doesn't have a lot of great alternatives.
No, I mean, on the micro, we'll get into this a little bit, but inside of Entra, you have things like conditional access. Intune allows you to do some group policy-ish type things, but I still don't see it as a one-to-one replacement for
right. There are a lot of things that do group policy-ish things without ever really becoming a solid replacement for group policy.
Yeah.
Even like 6 products overlapping still don't quite get there, right?
Right.
What group policy does by itself.
Yep. So group policy, got to learn that too. Maybe I'll put that in the fundamentals section as well too. It's that important. So, well, number 2 on my list, after all of the on-premises technology we talked about, number 2 on my list also applies to on-prem, but it basically applies to anything in the Microsoft world. And I'm talking about PowerShell. Now, I've talked with a lot of, young admins over the years, people just fresh out of college. It still surprises me, how many new sysadmins I come across that they see the blinking cursor and the black background and they're instantly intimidated, right? Mm-hmm. What do I do? There's no GUI to hold my hand, right? And I say just dive right in. If, that's the only way you're going to learn PowerShell is to use PowerShell. That's always how I've explained PowerShell or any scripting language for that matter. I'd say the same thing about Bash and Linux, right? You have to use it to solve business issues to learn how to use it, right? And I'm sure there's a couple of things that you can do a couple of commands you can learn that makes it a little bit easier. My favorite command in PowerShell, and many people are shocked to hear me say this because they expect me to say like some fancy command that is super useful in niche situations, I guess. But my favorite command is get help. Get help is like the best command ever, because I don't know about you, Eric, like I suck at remembering syntax. And when I can do get help -- example, and actually see how the command is used across multiple different examples, I'm like, that's fantastic. Like, it just works with my brain so much better that way. The other command that I would say is super useful when you're getting started with PowerShell is get command. That gets you a list of all the different commands you can run, and get module. So PowerShell, if you're not aware, PowerShell is broken up into different modules. So you have an Active Directory module, a Hyper-V module. Each module contains all the different commands that are associated with that module, right? And so you can use all those commands to kind of filter and break down and discover which command you want to use, right? So I could go on and on about getting started with PowerShell, but from my point of view, Eric, here, I mean, administrators are constantly being asked to do more with less. So scripting and automation is a must. It is an absolute must, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where it really comes in handy is a lot of the on-premises cases we've already talked about. But when you start integrating cloud services, Microsoft cloud services into your ecosystem as well, I mean, you've got modules for Exchange Online, for Azure AD and Entra. I still say Azure AD. For Microsoft Entra, there are modules for that. There's modules for Graph. I mean, the tooling behind PowerShell is just incredible, and it's too incredible to ignore, in my opinion. I've been talking a lot here, Eric. I'll let you get a word in.
Well, let me, and maybe this is not exactly what you had in mind for this episode, but I will flat out say that you got to know PowerShell, and then based on how a person reacts, kind of makes me decide maybe a little bit preemptively, like, if this person long for the world of IT or not. So somebody's like, PowerShell, like, you're going to peak early if you can't, and be scared, whatever. Take your minute to go, oh, it's a lot and it's scary, and it is. Okay, yeah, it is. Honestly, it is intimidating. Sit there with a blinking cursor when you have no idea what to do. Like when you have the GUIs are all kind of designed to like draw your eye to something and kind of get you a way to discover and stumble across things. And when you just got that cursor, that's not there. You gotta have a purpose in mind when you sit down. And I get that. And I'm gonna totally, like, y'all want to be feeling afraid of it for the first time you get to it, or intimidated, or whatever terminology you want to use. Fine. I'm okay. I get that. But if you're like, no, I'm not doing that and you can't make me, you're right. I can't. But you've also put a level on how far you can go.
Oh, yeah.
There's only so much that can be done in a GUI. And the other part of it is somebody's written a lot of software in their life, I can tell you that GUIs, even bad GUIs, are hard to write. Good GUIs are almost impossible to write. And so what's happening out there is this super fast development cadence is they're going to turn out command line tools much more quickly than GUI tools. So all the really cool advanced stuff is going to have to be through a command line. So PowerShell is going to get you faster to the cool new stuff than the GUI ever will. It's just the nature of how things roll out. So if you want to hit top tier, top shelf, yeah, you're going to have to suck it up. And I'm not going to tell you it's easy. I'm not going to tell you don't have a very good reason to be like, we've all been there. And honestly, I don't want to hear somebody say, no, I've never come across something that didn't give me pause. Like, yes, you have, or you haven't seen enough. It's just one of the two, right? So yeah, it's fine to maybe not where you were thinking about this, but I want to say PowerShell is absolutely non-negotiable because you want to get ahead, you're going to have to know it. And I will tell you right now that if you're trying to like compete for top dog, knowing the PowerShell is what gets you there.
Yep. This is exactly what I had in mind for this episode, right? I mean, if you're not sure what Microsoft skills should be in your tool belt, that's what we're talking about. And like you said, PowerShell, non-negotiable. You got to have that.
Non-negotiable. And the best part about PowerShell, this goes back to some of those design philosophies behind when they were sitting down and building it. If you understand the kind of the layout of any PowerShell module, you're prepped to go. Like one of the things that has been, let's go back to the GUI for a second. Something that has upset people for as long as I can remember is file, view, help. What does that mean? Like nobody really knows, but everybody sits down and when they see file view help, they already like we're so ingrained in our collective conscious for so many decades that anybody my age and thereabouts, like file view help, that's how programs are arranged. Okay. And so we started developing things because people would expect file view help menus on all their software. So you sit down in front of PowerShell, you've got get, you've got set, you've got remove, there's certain things are going to will happen inside
Yep.
all your modules. So learning one kind of sets you the stage for learning all the rest. So you
Yep.
might go, all right, I went from this program to this program and wow, they're radically different. Everything's different. But then I sit down in front of the PowerShell module and it's get, set, remove,
Right.
So you want to like fast jump into something else, you learn its PowerShell module first, right? And then the GUI stuff can come later.
Yep. Agreed. I mean, I'm always kind of keeping an eye on the Hyper-V PowerShell modules just because I still use Hyper-V quite a bit. There are still features in Hyper-V that are accessible only via PowerShell.
A lot.
Yep. Quite a lot.
Because they can't keep the GUI developed quickly enough here's another thing, they just can't keep on top of it.
And keeping with the Hyper-V example, one thing that a lot of people ask me about when I'm trying to teach PowerShell to folks that don't really know it is, well, what can I use it for? We had a perfect example in a recent episode you and I recorded when we were talking about virtual switch configuration for Hyper-V. Let's say you have 20 Hyper-V hosts. You need to make some major changes to the virtual switch configuration for whatever reason. Instead of having to touch each host manually, write one PowerShell script and run it on each, right?
Mm-hmm. And the loop that you write to do that is then the same one you're going to do later when you want to reconfigure 20 DHCP scopes. And then later when you need to change 20 DNS zones. And
I would argue that
it's highly repetitive.
Yeah, I would argue that PowerShell knowledge is a snowball, right?
Facts.
Yep.
Facts. Because I've sat down and so you were talking about the modules and the help, and and I'm assuming like you can do get command dash module and then just hit tab and it'll cycle through the modules installed on your system and you go, that's the one I want, remote desktop or whatever, enter, show you the command just in that module. So you need to start learning get help, get command. I think get command I use probably now more than get help as I've gotten further along, but get command first shows you what's there, and then get help shows you how to use it. Perfect. So when you're sitting there in that blinking cursor, that's your solution. I don't know what to do. How about we do get command first? Get module to see what's here, get command on a module to see what's in the module, and then get help on a command that interests us. There you go. You just learned everything you need to know about PowerShell. Have a nice day. Goodbye. We're going
to have to do more PowerShell episodes. There's so much to unpack there. We could talk for hours on PowerShell.
Easily.
But I'm sensitive that we are 36 minutes into the episode and we have 3 areas to cover yet. So
now we hit the big 2, so we're good.
Those are the big 2. Those are like your foundational items. Now we get into some stuff that is, I don't want to say situational, but not every organization is going to use these. But I think if you want to be well-rounded as a system admin in the Microsoft space, you should know these. And I had these ordered a certain way in my outline. I'm going to flip 2 of them because one of them underpins the other 2. And we're going to talk about Azure, we're going to talk about Entra, and we're going to talk about M365. And I was going to start by talking about Azure, but I want to talk about Entra first, because Entra, or the artist formerly known as Azure AD, which I still call it a lot of the time, Entra is the underlying identity engine for basically everything in the Microsoft cloud. For Azure resources, it uses Entra for its identity management. For Microsoft 365, it uses Entra for its identity management. You can't hardly do anything in the Microsoft cloud without Entra being involved in some way, shape, or form. And I keep mentioning episodes that we've done before. Our good friend Paul Schnackenberg and I, we did an episode where we talked about how identity is the new firewall. We talk about this cloud world we're in now. We're not confined to the four walls of a building or a data center, right? Anybody can access resources from anywhere. Well, identity is now the new firewall for SaaS solutions, cloud apps, things like that. So knowing Entra is super important if you're going to do anything in the Microsoft cloud. So Entra it encompasses a lot of different things. We could do multiple episodes just on Microsoft Entra, but keeping it at a high level here, some of the sub features inside of Entra would be things like conditional access. We talked about conditional access really briefly earlier. We were talking about group policy. So the thing about conditional access that's really cool is it's exactly what it sounds like, right? You want to access a resource in the Microsoft cloud, but you need to meet certain conditions first in order to access that. So maybe I can figure a policy. Eric wants to reach some cloud resources. I can figure a policy that says, well, Eric can reach those resources, but has to be from a machine that is registered in Intune and is using the Microsoft Edge browser and has authenticated recently using multi-factor authentication. You can create kind of those stacked rules using conditional access. So you can really tightly control how data and resources and applications are accessed and by whom, right? So conditional access, is such an integral part of Entra. I think the other thing that you really need to understand, and I'll let you jump in here in a second, Eric, but I wanted to make sure that I mentioned the identity lifecycle. So Entra really has this concept of RBAC, role-based access control, right? Where you gain access based on what role you're assigned inside of Entra. You need to understand RBAC to really understand how to handle permissions inside of the Microsoft Cloud. I think the other thing that you need to understand is how to audit. How do you monitor those logins from a security perspective? Because in the cloud, I don't want to downplay security on-prem. I think it's important. I think it's more difficult in cloud ecosystems because there's just more complexity. So it's important that you know and understand how to monitor and keep an eye on Entra. And I always talk about this when I'm talking about Entra, JIT or just in time. Usually you hear it as just in time admin or just in time administration. There's a couple of different variations, but basically what it means is you're only going to provide access to a resource for only the period that is necessary, right? You kind of hear that hand in hand with the other term, JIA, just enough admin. And that is giving people only the rights they need to do the job at hand, right? So anyway, those to me are like the core pieces of Entra that I think are important. But Eric, I want to give you a chance to jump in there.
I'm going to challenge you on that a little bit.
Sure.
I agree. Entra is very important. I think you may be coming at it from a person who lives and is kind of immersed in security, and a lot of us are not, where we
Right.
do rely on our security offices to deal with a lot of things. So I can't tell you how to monitor or audit an Entra thing right here. And I hope you don't suddenly think, well, he's gone. He's no good. He
Oh
can't
my
do it.
God, Eric, come on, man. No, I don't
I really,
that.
I don't know those things. And but if flat-footed, you're like, are they important? Can you explain the importance? Yeah, I could explain why it's important, but I can also say I've also got a team of very competent folks sitting in another room who will flip those switches in a heartbeat, and they're
Yeah.
on it, and they're getting all the data, and they know the things, and so that I don't have to. So I need to be conversant in Entra. I need to understand the importance of all the terminology you just said. I don't really know that it's a deal breaker if somebody comes in and they don't know how to do a lot of the things that you said on the basis that, well, is that the position that I'm hiring for? Does that kind of make sense what I'm saying
It
here?
makes sense. It makes sense. And people that watch the show, they know that I've lived in the security world for a while now. So I certainly look at it through that lens. And when I say, you should know, you know, monitoring, I don't mean you have to know like all the nitty gritty, every single menu, every single command line switch for monitoring. I think, like you said, you need to at least be fluent enough in it to where you can have a conversation about it and go learn more about it if you need to for a given situation, right?
I would go back to a comment I made a little bit earlier on, like, if you run into something you need to be able to do and you don't know how to do it, do you realize what's preventing you from doing it, or do you just get a big red message and
Give up. Hope
yeah?
not.
So
We don't give up as sysadmins.
power through.
That's
Because I'm
right.
hoping you're getting that and going, oh, this is clearly like a permissions thing to the extent that it can be. I mean, I know Microsoft, especially their error messaging, can be terrible to the point of like, I want to find the person who wrote something went wrong for the first time, and we need to have a chat. You did it
My favorite
wrong.
is
You want to know what went wrong? Is the developer went wrong? You don't. This is not how we do things.
my
So yeah,
my favorite my favorite is an unspecified error occurred.
yeah. It's terrible, and well, yeah, we're about to step in a lot of my pet peeves, so I need to be careful. It's a lot about it here is I don't expect you to personally know how to get in and flip all the switches and do all the things. I do expect you to know what all the terms mean. I
Yep.
expect you to realize, yeah, you can't just necessarily do all the things that you want to do. There may be something in the way. What might that be? Oh, maybe I don't have the correct permissions. Okay, I need to go talk to someone who does. Right? I do
Yep.
expect that of people.
Yep. Excuse me. And I will say that we know that in the sysadmin world, there are a lot of different there's a lot of different sub areas, specializations that people can go into, right? I will say that if you are going into the security side of things or it's something you're interested in, you probably want to put a little bit more emphasis on Entra than some of the other areas that we've talked about thus far, right?
I
Because it
agree.
is like the soul of cloud security in Microsoft land, right?
Yes.
So,
It is at
well,
least as important as Active Directory on premises. You've got
oh
to
yeah,
have that Entra ID if you're going to be,
yep,
yeah. Entra is more specific than Active Directory. So I think we can comfortably say that Active Directory is foundational knowledge, not necessarily you need to know every last little thing about auditing, access control. I mean, like I'm not going to, if I'm not hiring for security role, I'm not going to have somebody come in and I need you to understand, can you explain to me how the Kerberos exchange works? Do you know that? And like, I'm not going to push that if they're not security related,
right,
right?
right, yep,
So I do think exactly what you just said. If you're coming in from a security standpoint, the questions I would ask you are going to be different,
yep,
right? So you need
yep,
to you can't hit flat footed on these. You can't. I don't know what Entra is. You sure you want to be in this field? So
right, right. So, with the time we've got left, we've got two other areas I want to talk about. I'm going to kind of lump these together because they are kind of interconnected because of Entra. And of course, I'm talking about Azure and M365. Now, we could spend, boy, we could spend the rest of this year on episodes about these two areas and probably still not cover all of it. These are vast areas, right? But I'm lumping both of these together because from my perspective, Azure and M365 combined, that is like the Microsoft Cloud ecosystem, right? You've got Azure for infrastructure, interconnectivity, storage, and everything in between, right? AI workloads, I could go on. M365 is more end user focused. That's your, your office suite, that's your communication mechanisms like email, Teams, Intune, which includes your device management for your fleet of devices. The two of these combined can basically knock out just about any computing problem that I could see you running into. Not, I say pretty much everyone. I'm not sure it could do every single one, but pretty darn close, right? So when I look at these two particular areas, I think there's we talk about subspecialties, right? Places that you could focus on. There's a little bit of a split here. And I think if you want to be a good, well-rounded sysadmin, you should know a little bit about both of them. But if you're, strictly a cloud infrastructure type of person, you probably want to focus more on the Azure stuff. If you're more on the productivity and end user support side, M365 is probably a little bit better for you to learn about. But when we talk about Azure specifically, I think for me, Eric, the basics in Azure are spinning up virtual machines, handling networking, storage, basically all of that plumbing stuff we've been doing in the on-premise worlds all these years, right? I think that's like the basics that you should know to get into Azure. You can at least spin up workloads, host workloads, and from there you can start branching out into some of the other services, some of the PaaS services, and things like that. But I think running VMs and managing all the plumbing in between, the cloud networking especially, I think those are good areas to start, in my opinion. I don't know if you have any particular thoughts on Azure. I know, as a rule, you've usually worked for organizations that have not been able to host workloads in the cloud, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, true enough. Yeah, a lot of it is if SaaS can't do it, then we immediately start like, all right, what's our goal here? That
Right.
we love SaaS. I mean, I think a lot of people, oh, you're going to take care of all of it, and our users just have to type. Yeah, sign us up. It's sort of we need you to set up a bunch of Azure VMs. Like, all right, why am I not doing that on-prem? Because the cost of an Azure VM is still astronomical. Just
Right.
right. That happens a lot. So I think if we want to talk about universally foundational requirements, I think you're gonna past Entra, you immediately start to get into a little bit of questionable territory because it does depend on where are you going in your career. Are you
Yep.
because there's so much in Azure that you can't get it all. I've never met anybody who will straight faced without like, oh, I know everything in Azure. Like, I don't think you do.
Nope. I haven't met
So
that person either. I have no I don't think
yeah,
there is a person like that.
yeah. So I immediately get a little bit like, could I get by if I didn't know virtual machine networking in Azure? And yeah, I think I could get pretty far in life without knowing that. Unless that was my job to manage virtual machines in
Yep.
Azure, and then I wouldn't get very far at all. So I do think the nice thing about the Azure deal is like for all y'all out there who are like trying to get your feet wet or whatever, then sometimes it's net cheaper for you to do break fix things with your own virtual machines in Azure. So get out there and learn how, like, we're just going over DNS and all this stuff is super important. You can go build those things in Azure, break them. And I
Yep.
don't know that wouldn't, as long as you're turning the VMs off as soon as you're done with them, it shouldn't be terribly expensive, right? So it's kind of a cheap way to
No.
get into a lot of the other things. Because networking in general, like if you don't have a good idea of, you got to know TCP/IP within, you don't like what I'm trying to avoid here is you don't always need to know very much about routing per se, but you need to kind of get, how to move an Ethernet frame from one network to another. I
Yep.
hope I'm not getting too far off
Yep.
the tangent here. Like, so part of it is like, I think you don't necessarily need to know virtual machine networking in Azure. But if you don't know anything about anything and you're just trying to get your feet wet and you've got a little bit of money to spend, starting off by spinning up virtual machines in Azure, connecting them on the network, getting them on the internet, making sure that no one can get to them from the internet unless you want it, those sorts of things can really jumpstart your career in a really great way. But then if you don't know
Yep.
them, you can still succeed too. So
Yep.
I guess I'm trying to have my
I
cake and
would
eat it too. And I apologize for that, but
No, no, I think this is all valuable information. I was going to suggest for those folks that maybe are testing out Azure, I believe you can get a $200 trial, where you're given $200 of Azure credits. I would suggest if you're going to try spinning up virtual machines in Azure, take a look at the B is in Bravo, the B series virtual machines. B stands for burstable. These are virtual machines that are designed to be at relatively low CPU usage most of the time, but are allowed to burst up to a high level usage. What's nice about them is they're fairly cheap, and typically, even lab virtual machines, you're probably not gonna use them to the extent to where you use too much CPU, right? So I really like B series for testing purposes. So
That's great advice.
yep, it's helpful because you know last thing you want to do is leave a monster series VM, an M series running for a week, and oh, by the way, you owe us $3,000 now. Which leads
Yeah,
me to
so
my
here, let me
next
give you
point.
another tip that'll really jumpstart your career is figure out how to set up a script that runs when the session has been disconnected for 5 minutes and turns the virtual machine off. So that way you don't get those surprise bills.
Yeah, at
So
the
there, you
very
learned how to
least,
script, you learned about virtual machines, you learned about saving money, and wow, you want to really get a job fast? I know how to save money. I don't
that's
spend
right.
money that doesn't matter. And man, that goes a long way with hiring managers. Oh yeah, okay, cool.
It does. It does. It does. I will say, when you go through the new VM wizard in Azure, there is a place where you can define an auto shutdown time. I think it defaults to, at least for me, it defaults to
I don't
7
take all the
p.m.
fun out of scripting, man. Come on.
I'm not trying to take the fun out of. See, your suggested option has the benefit, and it's a really cool idea. Okay, the RDP session is gone, or the SSH session, or whatever, right? Is no longer there. Shut the VM down. See, that's a cool idea. So, and of course, you can look at things like what is it? Front door, Azure front. That might be the old name for it. There's services in Azure that help you with that type of stuff as well. See, Azure's so vast, I can't keep up on.
Oh, here, let me
on
let me
all
let
this
me
stuff.
do let me do even better. AI prompt. How do I use PowerShell 2?
Yep,
Fill in the blank.
exactly.
So
You
they're
you
using
and I
all the new
did that.
stuff.
Yep, you and I did that episode on GitHub Copilot, where we
Yep.
covered some of that type of stuff. So I'll include that in the show notes as well too. This might be a record. I think we've referenced like 5 or 6 previous episodes. So this is going to
That's
be a
great
rather
though. I
large.
mean, it shows like we live what we talk about
Yep.
and we use all of them interchangeably all the time. So I think this is great stuff. And
Yep. So I want to spend just a few minutes on M365 before we wrap up here. So M365, like I said, is more, if you're an sysadmin that's going to focus more on end user experience or communications, either direct chat or uh, email. This is probably the side of the Microsoft Cloud that you want to gravitate towards, because I remember back in the day managing Microsoft Exchange 5.5 and the information store service falling flat on its face over and over again, and it got better. It didn't get much better, and there were just new problems with newer versions of Exchange. What I'm leading up to is, once I heard that Microsoft could host Exchange for me through M365. Back then it was called BPOS, Business Productivity Online Suite. As soon as I heard Microsoft would host Exchange for me, I'm like, okay, where do I sign? Here's my Exchange server. I don't want to touch this thing anymore, right? So that's one of the big, big benefits of Microsoft 365 is not having to manage Exchange. And everybody might be like, that's a really weird positive that you're saying there, Andy. Like, that's really strange that you're highlighting that. If you've ever had to manage Exchange, you would be saying this too. So
it's weird. If we had filmed this 10 years ago, what you have to know to survive in a Microsoft world, Exchange would have had to have been on the list.
oh, for sure. For sure it would have had to been on the list. Yep. Now, like I could never imagine going back. I mean,
No.
the mail management and routing in 365 it's not perfect, but it is
Right.
so well done. You know, I don't have to worry about Exchange anymore, which is fantastic. So, yep. So, I think if you're going to focus, like I said, more on the end user side of things or the communication side of things, you want to look at M365. If you're focusing on communications, definitely look at Exchange Online. Look at the Teams stuff. There's management portals for each of them. And then you also have, and this is a whole episode in and of itself, there's a whole suite of security and compliance tools on the 365 side. Paul Steckenberg and I, we've done episodes just on licensing for Microsoft 365. That's how complex it is. But I think at a high level, if you're just trying to dabble, you're just trying to touch M365 just a little bit, you want to know Entra, which we've already talked about. But you probably want to touch on Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Teams, and OneDrive management. Those are probably the big ones you want to look at. You can go further from there if you want to be more of a desktop admin. You probably want to look at Intune. Intune is that device management side of M365. Ton of really cool tools inside of Intune. But M365, even by itself, is incredibly vast with a bunch of sub areas within it, right? So, yeah, I know we're coming up on about an hour here, Eric, but I could go on about 365. I live in 365 a lot, so I could get carried away, but I'm trying not to.
I can't because I'm not M365. I'm a user,
right?
So
right. So I don't know if there's anything. If there's nothing you want to add, I think we could probably wrap this thing up.
All right.
Well, appreciate you spending some time with us, Eric. I know we covered a lot in this episode. There's a lot of different knowledge areas. What we might have to do is maybe an episode for each of these areas we discuss, because I mean we could go really deep on.
We could do tons. We do series on Active Directory. We do a series on Entra. We could do. Yeah, we could.
Yep. So if that's something that's interesting to you folks, leave a comment or, again, email us, contact@sysadminweekly.com. I want to make sure that we are covering the topics that you are interested in. With that said, again, we are recording this as of August 28th, 2025. I think it was, I got to count back here on the 26th. Wait, no, 27th, yesterday. I'm losing time. Yesterday, we published an episode where I attached a poll to it that is asking this question exactly. What type of content would you like to see on this show? So you can go ahead and take a look at that poll. I think it's open for another week or two yet. So if you're, listening to this ways in the future, you might have missed it. Maybe I'll try and extend the poll. Take a look for it anyway. So anyway, Eric, again, thank you for spending some time with us. Always good talking to you, my friend. So we'll be talking to you again shortly in the future, it sounds like. So, and those of you watching, thanks for spending some time with us. Hopefully you found some value with today's episode. Again, you can find the show at www.sysadminweekly.com. You'll find links to every platform that we're on right there. And again, don't forget to check out the weekly newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. With that, we'll let you get back to your day. Hope you enjoyed your time here. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you again next week for another episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Have a good one.